first with Ric Peri, who's the Vice President for Regulatory Affairs. And Ric, I always enjoy talking with you at this show, so thanks very much for joining us again.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There have been some really interesting developments over the course of about the past month or so, as far as the regulatory world is concerned. Let's talk about both of those, both the Part 23 rewrite, but we had a hallway conversation. And you came up to me and you said, Tom, you got this thing all wrong, and you were talking about the EAA and Dynon announcement that happened at Sun 'n Fun. So tell me where I got it wrong.
Well, you got it wrong in that it's not the installation of experimental equipment in certified airplanes.
Okay.
That's the big thing. But what's interesting is that the two topics you brought up, you can't talk about independent of each other. Okay?
Okay.
When you talk about what's going on right now, and you're absolutely right, now is an exciting time, you know? And it's kind of fun for me because it's the coming together of 10 years worth of work, okay? And it's nice to see it coming together. But that's literally how long it takes to do these things. So when you look at the continuum that the FAA talks about with the Part 23 rewrite, and you understand that in the 23 NPRM, where they're looking at levels of aircraft and performance of aircraft in a matrix for the next generation, so that they apply the applicable design standards to a small, slow, simple airplane, and they apply the appropriate design standards for a large, fast, heavy passenger airplane. And if you understand that continuum, okay, we take that continuum concept into this EAA STC,
Okay.
and understand that it is that philosophy that's being done here. So everybody and you know, the media is kind of the shock and awe of this, and I don't want to take anything away from it. It's fabulous. The EAA STC is the culmination of many years of work to be able to create the atmosphere to where we can actually use the rules in the toolbox for the first time. Okay, so it's a continuum. A lot of people go, oh, well, you know, it's about Dynon. Well, it's sort of about Dynon. And Dynon's a great company, and I don't want to take anything away from them. But it's not about Dynon. It's about EAA. EAA is the applicant.
Right.
EAA is the STC holder. Okay?
Okay.
So we have to start there. All right? The applicant proposed to bring a commercial part, that is something made outside of aviation, looked at it, said, this part has an application for certain airplanes in certain environments in certain prospects. And they included that in the application to the FAA and said, hey, I've got this great product. Working with Dynon, they were able to take their design, Dynon's design, incorporate it into their STC, but then they demonstrated compliance to Part 23.
Okay.
Okay, so through the STC, they certified this product for specific applications.
Right.
Okay?
So essentially, it's a certified product.
It's an approved product.
It's an approved product.
Yes. Okay. Now, they did use a provision in Part 21 for commercial parts. And for anybody that's got the regulations handy, and I'm sure everybody has the regulations
out there with the book.
As I'm talking, they're flipping through their manuals going, I want to check what he's saying here.
They're checking on their iPads.
Yeah, exactly. In 21.9, on methods to approve parts, one of the line items is commercial part.
Right.
Now, it comes with limitations. The design is fixed. The maintenance is in the STC. Okay? The applicability is in the STC. And honestly, how you buy it and how you process it's in the STC. So I'm not going to go to eBay and go, hey, look, I got this great used, unit out there.
Yeah.
The other thing is that understand that while the unit itself, as it is installed in their market, sold by and installed in Dynon's market, it's sold as an EFIS.
Right.
Right? Not correct under the STC.
Not so much.
In the STC, it's an attitude indicator. Okay?
Okay.
And all of the EFIS functionality, most of the EFIS functionality, as I understand it, is still available, but you must have the 6-pack of the required equipment. So when you show compliance to Part 23, it all filters down. Okay? So it's really a fabulous move forward. It's a culmination of years of work. It's that safety continuum that we've been working in Part 23 with for over 10 years. It's all this coming down. So it's a fabulous thing, and kudos to EAA for being the first one to step up and do it. But the shock and awe is over. Now it comes back to reality.
And what is that reality? Does this become a yellow brick road for other non-certified avionics manufacturers to look and see how they might be able to incorporate their products into certified airplanes?
Yes and no. Okay? EAA didn't manufacture this.
Right.
They identified a third-party commercial part that they certified through their STC. Okay? If the manufacturer looked at the market and said, wow, this is a great market, I think I'll produce this and I'm going to sell this to the market. The regulation in Part 21.9 kicks in, and now it has to be produced under the pedigrees there. Could a repair station or a aircraft operator or some third party look at a product in the experimental aviation arena, say, boy, that's a great product, I think I want to use this over here, bring it in? They have the same opportunity to show full compliance with Part 23 and get a one-off certification for that product.
But you're not going to be able to install it in whatever airplane comes along, or
only in the limitations that you've demonstrated compliance to. Okay? So it's not fair to call it experimental any longer.
Right.
Because it's approved, and it's approved for Part 23, and it's approved for specific things. The EAA STC is limited in what amendment to 23 it's done to. It's not to the most current. And it is an STC for the direct replacement of vacuum-driven attitude indicators. So if you've got an electric attitude indicator, this STC is not applicable to you. Okay? If your aircraft is outside of the 4 types, this STC is not applicable to you.
Let's compare that to what happened a couple of years ago with the angle of attack indicator, because that came up and all of a sudden everybody was approved to put an angle of attack indicator in their airplane. How is that different than this?
It's actually not. It's a very similar project. The difference is that there was a consensus standard that defined the design of the angle of attack indicator. Okay? And so the FAA came down and said, if you produce this unit to this standard, and we will give you a production approval to produce and market your product. So they were satisfying the production requirements, not the STC requirements, but the production requirements for AOA. Very similar process, okay? But understand, that's not really that AOA indicator, while again, wonderful, a little bit of shock and awe, a little bit of modernization.
Some fun G-whiz.
A fun stuff, isn't really significantly different than what we do today. When we talk about the certified products here, these products are certified by TSO, Technical Standard Order, to which they have shown a production quality system that gives them a Technical Standard Order authorization, a TSOAA, okay? Or TSOA. And that authorizes them to produce this TSO'd article, or this article to the standard. So when you look at the radios, the instruments, the attitude indicators, those attitude indicators have an FAA technical standard order to them that references a commercial consensus standard or a public consensus standard. In the case of most radios, ADS-B, communication, navigation, GPS, any of those things, those are typically to the RTCA standards that have been incorporated by reference into the FAA TSO standard, which is the basis of this mass-marketed, broad-based product line that these manufacturers have made to.
You know, you said that you can't talk about the EAA situation without talking about Part 23, so let's talk about the Part 23 rewrite. And I know you've been deeply involved in a lot of what's going on with those certification standards. What is significant about going to a standards-based certification process through the FAA?
So, I just said a minute ago, for the communication, navigation systems here, there is a consensus standard by RTCA that has been incorporated by reference into the regulation. And if you look at the regulations, a lot of the regulations are performance-based. ADS-B must meet the performance of the TSO. Right? So what happens if you take that standard and embed it into the regulation? You can't meet the performance of the standard now, you must meet the standard prescriptively. Okay? The current Part 23 has those standards embedded into the regulation prescriptively. So when we build a new airplane, in many cases, we have these standards that date back into the 40s and 50s that are embedded in the regulations requiring prescriptive approach to the modern fleet. Limiting creativity, productivity, and creative thought like EA has brought to the table. So the Part 23, what they did was they went in and looked at this, and this goes back to the certification process study, the Part 23 original review, which was 2008. And it was this prescriptive language in the regulations about how to comply with the regulations, how to provide safety, was inhibiting modernization and creativity. So we needed to separate the two out, and that's what the ARC did. The ARC went in and literally took out the how to do something out of the regulations, retaining the what we must do, the safety standards of the regulations.
So is that why we have airplanes that are being produced and developed today that look like airplanes that were produced and developed 50, 60 years ago?
Exactly. And so this new Part 23, under this continuum and this new mindset, says, okay, this is what we want done. We want the occupants of the airplane to survive an accident. Okay? Because the standard has been moved out of the regulation, it's one way but not the only way. We've heard that for years out of advisory circulars. So the idea is to separate the two out, allow for creativity and modernization. And so the reality is that when we tell someone that we want airplanes that you can survive a minor accident with, let the industry be creative on how they do that. Bring in airbags that we have in the automotive industry. Bring in collapsible steering wheels that we have in the automotive industry. Bring in those things. You know, I was talking this morning to the Rise and Shine, and I asked the question, how many people in the audience have a vehicle that doesn't have an idiot light telling you when you're running out of gas?
Yeah.
I mean, how many, you know? Why don't I have it in my airplane?
You're a pilot, you're supposed to know.
You know? and it's those simple, silly questions that this 23 is giving us the opportunity to answer.
I want to shift because some have postulated that the explosion in the drone industry has largely grown out of a lot of the advancements in aircraft avionics and some of the things you do here. Are you involved at all in the Part 107 crafting that's going along with the FAA? Because there are a lot of things that, there are many parallels between aircraft electronics and the unmanned industry.
On the peripheral.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason is, yes, it's an unmanned or remotely piloted vehicle. I personally don't like drone and I don't like UAS. Okay. Because they're not unmanned. Unmanned is an autonomous vehicle.
Okay.
Okay. These are remotely piloted vehicles. Okay.
Okay.
And it's important to understand that they're remotely piloted. And keep in mind, they're remotely piloted aircraft.
Operative words being pilot and aircraft.
Operative, pilot, and airplanes. All the maintenance regulations that we use today for certified airplanes, all of the requirements for product that we talk about today for certified airplanes apply to certified airplanes, whether the pilot is internal or external.
Okay.
If you look at the Part 23 rewrite, Level 1 aircraft is 0 to 1 pilot.
Okay.
0 to 1 seats. And somebody asked me, well, I hate to ask silly questions, but how do you have a plane with a 0 seat? And I said, it's remotely piloted. The regulations apply to that. Now we have the 55-pound rule,
Right.
which exempts aircraft under 55 pounds from the certification standards and the maintenance standards.
Okay.
Okay? For recreational vehicles. Okay? So, in essence, we have owner maintenance of recreational, remotely piloted vehicles under 55 pounds. Once you go into commercial service, you actually have a certified maintenance requirement, may not require an A&P or repair station, but you have a, as part of your operation specifications, you have a maintenance requirement. And when you get over 55 pounds, it becomes a certificated airplane, and now you have certificated airplane rules that fall into it. And in many cases, it will include the A&P and the avionics technicians as well.
Well, Rick, I know that this Part 23 rewrite is something that you've been working on for a long time. Once that is done, then what are some of the next issues that you think you'll be dealing with as far as the regulatory environment is concerned?
The safety continuum, this fundamental safety continuum that we keep bringing up, is being applied across the spectrum. So when you see the work we're doing with rotorcraft in 27 and 29, okay, you're seeing the beginning of the application. The major shift we're seeing with the Part 23 is the majority of the advisory materials as well as the internal standards that were in the rule that have been shifted out are being shifted out into ASTM F44 standards, okay? But we had standards for aircraft wiring 10 years ago, okay?
Right.
So the use of consensus standards as acceptable means of compliance to existing regulations is growing. And that's where we're spending a lot of time. We're seeing it both in rotorcraft with infrared night suns. We're actually managing a standard in the development of a couple of rotorcraft standards right now. We're doing it for other Part 23 standards. We're developing standards against the current 23. And so you're going to continue to see that growth. With ASTM, you'll see it primarily in the 23, 27, probably some 29. So that's the normal and heavy category of helicopters. And then as well as 23. You see a parallel action with SAE, the Society of Automotive Engineers, in regard to Part 25. And so you're seeing a lot of that activity over there. So you're going to continue to see that growth as the FAA and the agency continue to focus on where their risk is the greatest and spending their resources on the high risk areas, allowing consensus standards to backfill some of these other areas.
Well, Rick, thanks very much. We're going to take a quick break, bring your colleague Mike Adams up for a few moments and chat about some of your other programs, but it's always fascinating to talk to you. I really appreciate you taking some time to talk with us today.
You bet.
Great to talk to you.
Aero-News Network's coverage of the 59th Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show, live from Orlando, Florida, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors.
The True Blue Power TC280 AC to DC converter supplies 280 watts of power from the aircraft's 115 VAC input. Engineered to run cooler, the fanless design saves energy and reduces weight. The highly efficient TSO certified TC280 is engineered with input transient, overload, and short circuit protection, and features remote on-off capability. Available from your local avionics dealer.